So, failure to prepare is preparing to fail. I do believe that a lot of what we do as, ultimately as a coach, you are a teacher, you are an educator. You're trying to teach a sport, but the process is similar. You wouldn't send your kids to school if you thought the teachers were just winging it in class. If you thought the teachers were winging it in class every day, you just wouldn't be comfortable with that process. So I do believe that clubs, coaches, teams do need to provide some sort of plan to their players for a number of reasons. The first one being for yourselves as coaches, as directors of coaching, as parents. You want to know where the players are, what they're doing, and how to track their progress. You need to be able to track your own progress and understand how to improve yourself. So there are a number of reasons that we prepare properly, we reflect properly on what we've done, and hopefully this presentation will be able to guide you through some of that process. So when we talk about planning, can everybody hear me okay? I'm getting a notification that there's bad network quality.
It's in and out a little bit, David.
Okay. If it becomes a real issue, just somebody jump on and let me know. Every so often I'm getting a notification that there's connectivity issues. So if you can't hear me, shoot me a message on the chat or somebody jump in and say something. But when we talk about planning, we talk about 3 cycles. A macro cycle, which for us generally means that the soccer season. A meso, in terms of my own reference, is normally a month, and a micro would be the session itself. The reason that we want to plan out our year is because it's important to know when our games are, to know when our tournaments are, to know where our players are in terms of their own development, depending on their age, depending on their ability, depending on the ability of the opposition. So when we are planning for the long term, some of the considerations we need to take into account are, as I say, the age and the game model of the players. Are they 4v4 through 11v11? Where are they now and where do they need to be according to some sort of competency matrix, which is basically a barometer of where players should be in their development. The level of play that they're at, whether you're coaching a recreational team of 6 or 7-year-olds or whether you're coaching an elite developmental academy, that will obviously have an impact on how you plan. The frequency and training of games, that's an important one, particularly in this part of the world. Obviously in Wyoming, most of the clubs have regular league play. So basing your training around that tournament play can be particularly important for a number of reasons, not only to prepare the players tactically and technically, but also to prepare the players physically, knowing when to train, how often to train, the intensity of training. So that's an important one. And then what resources you have available to you, and depending on your club, depending on your environment. Do you have access to coaching education? So you certainly can for free. But does your club have education? Do you do coaching education at club level? Do you have a curriculum? Do you have session plans? Do you have a director of coaching? Are your fields lined? Do you have, a good steady source of equipment? These are all things that you'll need to consider as you're moving through the planning process. So I'm showing you a couple of different. The first one is a competency matrix, which I will give most of the credit to this to Brian Longbottom, who put this together, or put something very similar together for Cheyenne Soccer Club, and when he was working for the State Association, was kind enough to share this with us, and we tweaked it a little bit. But basically gives you an idea, depending on the O's and the X's, whether the skills should be being introduced or whether they should be competent at them, depending on the age group. I'm not going to read through every single one, but you can see that everything from physical literacy down to dribbling, skills that they can at certain age groups. As I said at the start, all of this stuff will be available to you after the presentation is done, so there's no need to, print screen or anything like that. Through the links in the presentation, you'll be able to access all this stuff. But as you can see, when we know what the players should be able to achieve according to their age and their age group, it becomes a slightly easier prospect as to know when to plan and how to plan. So go back to the presentation, which links in nicely to a file that I put together to show what a season looks like. So this is, I know it's very small now on your screen, but this is a 6-month period planned out that I did for my 2006 boys. Each box represents a week. And at this point, when we're planning our season, we're not going into the nitty-gritties of what's going into a session. It's just a very basic outline about what we're doing and when we're doing it. If you are so inclined and you feel like you have the knowledge, you can fill this information as well. Whether it's fitness, all you do is click on the drop down and select at what level you expect the players to be performing at on that particular day. So week 5 here, if you plug in your date at the very start, it'll automatically populate all of the days. So you have an accurate representation of what day you're on and what day you should be training. And pretty much everything is a drop-down menu, every box. So you can train, it's a game, or you have the day off. Team function, is it attacking, defending, or is it a transitional topic? We talked about what area of the field are you planning on working in? Learning objectives is something that you'll need to type in there and punch in there. The fitness level of the players, the game size. As a general rule of thumb, when we're talking about a macro cycle, planning for an extended number of months, and when we talk about soccer, we talk about when you start in pre-season, for example, when the players have been off for several weeks, you want to start generally with a larger game model. So you'll see here, week 1, we're working it with between 8v8 and 11v11. The reason we work in bigger game models is just because there's less physical load on the players, less risk of injury. And as they build up a level of match fitness through the first 4 weeks, then we can start to scale the games down to 3v3 or 4v4. Again, not something that we necessarily need to be too concerned about at the level that we're talking about, but it should be a consideration. And if you have some experience or you feel comfortable with it, by all means, play around with it. And then basically it gives you a couple of boxes at the bottom to punch in some basic information. And then afterwards, I put just to reflect. As you can see, if I zoom out, I did a much better job of reflecting with all these comments and stuff earlier in the season, and then as the season dragged on, as you can see, the comment section's got a little bit less and less. But I did find that this last sort of 18 months is the first time that I've used this type of planning document, and I found it very, very helpful. And as I said, a blank for you guys to use in whatever way you want. And if you have any questions about it after the presentation is done, if you do feel like going and having a play around with it and using it, by all means, give me a call, shoot me a text, shoot me an email. We can talk it through. But back to the presentation itself, when we talk about a macro cycle, we are talking about planning out for a number of months, okay, up to a year in soccer. We start to break it down to a month-by-month cycle. We need to start having a much clearer idea of of what we're going to be doing on any given session. So we need to be more specific about the session topics, about the players that we're going to target in those sessions, because as much as we would love to be able to coach all 18 players to the same level every single time we step on the field, it's impossible to do. So the most efficient and effective way of coaching sessions is to, before, as you plan your sessions out, okay, I'm going to target Billy, Joe, Daniel, and whoever on Monday, and on Wednesday I will target X, 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 and X. So we start to, everybody gets something out the session, but we change our focus group from session to session. Now, for me, in the way that I process things, the way that I have found it easiest to do is to start from the end and work backwards. So where do I want the players to be at the very end of this process? And then scale it back. So what do we need to work on there? What do we need to work on the month before that? What do we need to work on the month before that? Again, we're not planning out the individual sessions, outlining what we're going to be working on and when, which players we're targeting, and it's fluid in nature. The reason that it has to be fluid in nature, that it's a living, breathing document, is that you may go to a tournament and concede 30 goals in 4 games. Now, that very clearly means that you're going to have to go back to the drawing board and work on defending. If you're conceding 30 goals across 4 games, there's an obvious issue with your defensive strategy or individual defending technique. So you can change, and it can be manipulated as you move through the season. So it's not rigid, but I'm going to show you a couple of examples of ones that I use. So this is something that I developed and put together. Again, this is available to everybody through these links. I put together a curriculum and session planning document for every age group from U8 to U19. And it's hopefully it's visually it's uneasy to understand. So we split the game up into 5 parts. Okay, technical, tactical, obviously, social, psychological, and physical. So in this long-term development wheel, as I called it, you'll see that physically we talk about 1v1 physical strength, ball striking, reactions, psychologically trusting and communicating with teammates, bravery, socially, being clear and precise, in possession, out of possession, in possession, out of possession for tactical. And then when we move on to what the weeks are, this is week 1, this is week 2. So week 1 might be 2 or 3 sessions in week 1, but this is what we're going to be working on within the week. We're going to be working on attacking, playing out from the back. There are other ways to use this as well. If you wanted to do this as session by session, so instead of a week number, this could be a session number. So session 1 on Monday, you're working through attacking, playing from the back. Session 2 on Wednesday, you're playing through midfield. Again, this is a living, breathing document. It can be manipulated however you see fit. But for the purpose of this presentation, week 1, we're working on attacking. We're playing out from the back. The technical aspects are, are passing and receiving, improving ball striking when opposed, control receiving both feet. There's social aspects that we're working on, the psychological aspects we're working on, physical, tactical, what coaching styles I'm going to attempt to use this week, and then which players, including the goalkeeper, we're going to be working on that particular week. Now we go through week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, and then we get to the second learning cycle. So this one will look very similar to this with some additions. So the idea being that we develop and we add to this wheel as we move through. So by the end of the next learning cycle, 1, 2, 3, 4, we'll be able to achieve these things. And then we'll be able to move through. Following the next 4 weeks, we'll be able to achieve these things, and that will take you through to the end of the season. Now, this is built out for 16 weeks. That tends to be around the length of a fall. again, so we're talking just talking about the importance of planning. WSA, myself, we are a resource for you, for your clubs, for your coaches, for coaching curriculums, for session design. We would love to get to a point where everybody in the state, every coach that's coaching, can develop this type of session plan or follow this type of curriculum. But we are here as a resource. If you can't, we come to us. We can share this information with you. We can share it with your clubs, with your executive directors, with your board presidents. If you want us to come to a club and deliver this as a board presentation so they have a better understanding of what a curriculum should look like, how you can follow it, how you can implement it. We are, again, anything you need from us, we can show you what to do. When we go down to the microcycle, now this is the stuff that every coach, everybody that's on the field in every part of the state should be invested in. And everybody should be planning their sessions. And when we talk about microcycles, we're talking about the individual session design, which is where the bulk of this presentation today is going to be based around. So the considerations, when you're going through the session planning process, ask yourself these questions. And these questions will guide you through the process. Is it organized? Are there cones, lines, goals, bibs, etc., etc.? Is it game-like? Is there repetition? Is it challenging? And is there effective coaching? Emphasis on effective coaching. I think a lot of us have experienced or been around coaches that certainly can talk and can even demonstrate their knowledge through talking. But when we talk about their effectiveness to, affect player actions, that's when we start to see some downfall. But planning the session. When we talk about is it organized, arrive early, get there before the players do. Do you have appropriate space? Obviously, a 4v4 team of 6-year-olds is going to need a lot less space than an 11v11 team of U18-year-olds. So you've got to be able to manipulate the space. If the space is lined, great. If it's not, how can you mitigate those circumstances? Be in a position that as the session moves along, you can take cones away and not add as the session goes on. The more stuff you have to add, I'm not talking about moving a couple of goals here and there, but if you have to set up whole fields and boundaries while the players are there at the field waiting to move from, say, the warm-up to the first technical development activity, the downtime is to your detriment because you're going to lose the attention of the players. Bibs laid out in positions can give a very good visual representation of where the players should set up for the session. So by the time they put the pennies on, everybody's in the position they need to be in, and you can just blow the whistle and go. Your session should expand as it develops, and by that I mean you start from the warm-up and you should end every session with some sort of scrimmage or game. That should mean that the boundaries of your activities as the session progresses get slightly larger up until the point you're playing the game at the end of the session. And take into consideration, depending on the level, age, and ability of your players, that less space will affect the speed of play and therefore will affect the quality of the play. If you're playing in a smaller grid, you would hope to see an increase in speed of play, but inevitably that is going to result in less quality during that game or that activity. The bigger the space is, you'll probably see a slight drop in the speed of play, but bigger space means more time for players to make an informed decision. My rule of thumb generally, especially when I take over a new team that I don't have too much knowledge about, is to start the space big. And then by week 2, we reduce the space. And by week 3, we reduce the space again. Just so if you start big, you can always make it smaller. If you start small, you kind of set the players up for, or set them up to be unsuccessful. So just bear that in mind when we talk about organization. Any questions so far? I feel like I've sort of chatted quite a lot here over the first 20, 25 minutes. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Oh. The next one, and maybe the most important one, is it game-like? And I mean that in a number of ways. Obviously, it needs to be specific to soccer. I'm not saying there isn't a place and time for a game of handball or something like that in soccer to teach players movement. But for the most part, you don't want to be, running Hail Marys. That's not going to be appropriate for your soccer team. The directional argument is a sensitive one on the national landscape. The Federation, for example, is a full proponent of games being directional, having goals, having end zones, dribble lines, target players, whatever that might be. Whereas if you do some of the foreign domestic licenses, like the Dutch one or the Spanish one, you would be exposed to rondos, which are basically small-sided possession games that don't necessarily have a target. So just something to consider. I personally like the directional nature of small-sided games. I think you can make rondos directional by having target players, by rotating positions of players, and we'll dive into that a little bit here and later in the presentation. But just something to consider. What I would say is if you're playing purely possession-based practices, if it's got no direction, and let's just say, 10 passes makes a point, something along that line, and you put them in a 30 by 30 square, that game, that activity, inevitably is set up for the players never to be successful. Okay, yes, they might get to 10 passes at some point and get a point, but at some point they're going to lose the ball again. And then the other team are going to have it. Then they're going to lose it. Then the other team are going to have it. Then they're going to lose it. There's no finite result. Everybody at some point is going to be unsuccessful, and there is a lack of success in an activity like that. If you do a possession-based practice where you have a target player at each end, and the direction of the game changes every time they find a target player, then there is a tangible result at the end of it. There is a goal scored, right? Every session should represent the game. One of my pet peeves personally is doing numbers up attacking. I'm not saying there isn't a time and place for it, but if you're going into your training sessions and every time you do an attacking topic, you do 6v4, or you have a goalkeeper and 4 defenders playing against 3 forwards and 2 midfielders, or even 3 midfielders, every time you're setting up the attacking team for success. When we talk about game-like, ask yourself, if you do a bit of self-reflection on the games that you've been involved in, how many times truly are your attacking players in a position to overload the defending players? Very rarely. So when we talk about practicing in game-like situations, particularly when we're talking about attacking, we should be teaching attacking numbers down. Creative runs off the ball, how to lose defenders, how to manipulate defenders physically. These are things that you should be considering, in terms of, is it being game-like? And then every session should, as I said before, should build towards the scrimmage. You should finish with some sort of game at the end, because that is the litmus test as to whether the players have taken on board any of the information that you've delivered. Any questions so far? Okay. Is there repetition? Again, you want to be careful when we talk about repetition, or we need to be careful when we talk about what are meaningful repetitions. We want the repetitions to be specific to the topic of the session. If we're talking about defending, we don't necessarily want our attackers spending a majority of time on the ball and you spending your time coaching the attacking. We want to get those defensive repetitions in, whatever they may be, whether it's as a tactical unit of 4 or whether it's 1v1 defending. We want to make sure that we spend our time coaching and promoting that defensive topic for the session. Are you using the appropriate area of the field? If you're doing building out from the back session and the ball starts from the center circle, if I was doing an assessment on that session, that would tell me that what the repetitions probably aren't where they need to be. If you're doing a build out from the back session, you probably want the goalkeeper to start with the ball every single time. So just things to consider. Isolated technique, again, touchy subject. There's a whole school of coaching academics that truly believe in this stuff. If you've ever done any of the Curver courses or the Rennie Mullenstein stuff, where we basically every player, it's a ball to a player, and they do these repetitive actions, rollovers, chips, flicks, toe taps, all that sort of stuff. The individual isolated technique stuff, running through cones. There is a time and place for it. It's definitely a time for refining technique. But in my experience, what I have seen is when we put those players after running through cones into a game situation where there are live active defenders, the translation from cone to live game can be a struggle sometimes, most of the time. So can we figure out a way to increase our meaningful repetitions in a game-like situation? More 1v1s, more 2v2s, more 2v1s, that type of stuff, where the games are short and sharp and the bouts and the rounds are, 5-10 seconds long, but we do a high volume of them in a session. And then tactical repetitions, your restart points, too often in our game, things like throw-in routines get neglected, corner kicks, free kicks. When we talk about designing sessions, often the ball starts with the coach, or it starts with the goalkeeper, or whoever that might be. It might be worth just restarting your games from throw-ins, even if it has nothing to do with your session topic. Let's say you're working on, attacking from wide areas. A great way to start that activity would be from a throw-in. You're already in a wide area. It's not related to your session topic, but it's a way to restart the activity from a wide area. Something that a lot of coaches neglect sometimes. Is it challenging? This is a difficult one, especially in our state, because typically our teams have such a wide range of abilities. I know we have some players at the elite level, what we would consider the elite level, that are maybe playing at an ODP level in our clubs and in our teams, all the way down to players that maybe have just transferred over from your in-town recreational programming, playing on the same roster. So is it challenging? Can be a challenging one for you as a coach. Typically, the way you challenge the players is by affecting the space, like we talked before. Making it smaller will make it harder. Making it bigger will make it slightly easier. Your time restrictions. What I have found is a great way at the entry level of soccer, U5 to U8, 9, that sort of age group. A great way to challenge the players is to give them a time limit to do a certain amount of things, because then they're only competing against themselves. So inevitably, at some point, they're going to taste some element of success. Obviously, opposition provides challenge. If you go numbers up, it's going to be more difficult. If you go numbers down, it's going to be easier. And then we talk about slanty line theory. Not going to delve too much into the theory behind all of this, but basically the idea being that you challenge the players at the very top, and if you draw a straight line down to the bottom of, diagonally to the bottom player, that the bottom player is being challenged by the same activity. Again, challenging players against themselves is a good way to do that, because eventually they will improve and they will beat themselves. Or grouping players together in a like-minded fashion. If you compartmentalize your team, so the better players at some part of the session are all playing together, and the middle of the group are playing together at some point, and the bottom end of the group are playing together at some point. There's some merit in that. Conversely, there's also merit in the best players playing with and against the lesser players in your team, because they're exposed to a higher level. So just about finding a balance. And then finally, is there effective coaching? Are your coaching points on topic, and are they specific? Specificity is key. Too many times we get this scattergun approach from coaches where they see something and they coach it. That has to stop. That has to go away. If we are working on attacking, if we're being specific about an attacking topic, the coaching points around that session should be about attacking. Unless you are specifically setting up the opposition team to provide a specific challenge, right? So let's say you had a game on Saturday, you struggled with the opposition's high press, they were pressing you in your own 18-yard box, then you might want to spend some time with your opposition players in your training session, instructing them on how to press high. That would be the only time you would talk about defending in that session. Everything else would be with your goalkeeper, your back four, and your defensive midfielder, working on the attacking topic of building out from the back. So you have to be specific. We cannot continue to scattergun approach our soccer coaching. If you were sat in school and you went to a math lesson, and then 20 minutes into your math lesson, your math teacher started teaching you geography. And then 5 minutes after that, they started teaching you English language and then English literature. It wouldn't make sense. You wouldn't be able to take on the information. It would be too much for you to handle as an adult, never mind a child. So we have to start scaling that back and being more specific with our coaching points. Choose a focus group, so target a group of players in each session and keep it brief. They're here to play soccer and not necessarily here. Not that you don't have the information, not that you don't have the knowledge, because you do. Your coaches, we appreciate everything that you possibly do, but the kids are there to play soccer. So can you be an effective and efficient coach and teach them in a way that keeps them on the ball, keeps the game moving? Consider keeping your learning language consistent. We're briefly going to touch on this. I don't want to delve too much into this, but I've put together a learning language document where certain calls or shouts would mean specific things to the players. Some of them are pretty self-explanatory. 1v1 would obviously mean that they take the opposition player on. But tidy up, come to, go away, those sorts of things. If we can start to get to a point where each club and in our state or even our state programs can use coaching language consistently, I think it also helps develop player understanding. And again, this resource, although it's not actively being used right now because it's just been developed recently, will be available to you on the website if you want to use it and look at it a little bit more. And then use of the coaching toolkit. Coaching is more than just freeze, listen to me. There are ways to get our points across to the players. We're going to delve into the coaching toolkit a little bit here, but does anybody have any questions at this point? And please don't be afraid. If we can open up a dialogue, I think everybody would get more out of this. So please let me know if you have any questions. Okay, keep moving on. So when we talk about the coaching toolkit, we talk about methods that we use as coaches to interact with players to create the most effective and efficient learning environment for the players. This is a player-centric environment that we're trying to create. It's not about the coach, it's about the players. We are servants to them. Yes, we lead, but it should be servant leadership. We should be meeting the needs of the players. Reduce the downtime, keep the players on task, give them drinks breaks, all that sort of stuff. I'm not saying there's not room for breaks and pauses in sessions, but the more we can reduce the downtime by being organized, by keeping them engaged in the game, by making the session dynamic, the less lack of you'll have a reduce in the lack of investment from the players, less messing around, less misbehavior, all that sort of stuff. Keep it concise and on topic. Nobody wants to be lectured. If you've done a coaching course with me, you've probably heard me say this before, but I live by the mantra, be a surgeon, not a butcher. Go in, be precise, do what you need to do, get it out, minimal damage, minimal invasive. Okay, so be a surgeon. So here is the coaching toolkit. So what are the actions as you as a teacher Check and adapt, that would, refers to, is the session working on a very basic level? Do you need to change anything? Do you need to change the size or the dimensions or the number of players? Does anything need to be changed? Positive reinforcement is a big one. Obviously, we need to praise effective player actions. Use of keywords, a big part of the play, practice, play methodology that the Federation rolled out and that we're going to touch on here in a little while. Asking questions, lots of questions, is always an effective way to develop learning. But there is time and space for demonstration, feedback, and command style coaching. If you ask a player 3 or 4 times to do something, to demonstrate something, to be able to showcase some sort of technique or some sort of tactical knowledge, and you give them a number of chances and they're still not quite getting it, at some point you're going to have to jump in there, demonstrate, and tell them how to do it. And then after you've told them and shown them how to do it, that's when you go back and start asking questions again, checking for their understanding. I'm not going to read through all of the information, and all of these teaching actions, but, there are moments in your session that are better to coach than others. Now, we talk about ongoing coaching and coaching in the flow as the players are moving around, coaching over the top of the game. Now, you're going to have to be very concise with your coaching moments or your coaching points when you do that, because they're not going to be able to take in huge amounts of information unless you make it an individual reference point. You call a player over, hey, Jimmy, come over here. And Jimmy comes over and you say to him, that was great, but I need you to do this, 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 and this. Or that was great. What do you think about doing this next time? And then you have a bit of a back and forth, and then you put the kid back into the game. Planned stoppages, breaks, or things like half times and stuff at scrimmages at the end of your game can be an effective way to deliver information. Natural stoppages, throw-ins, goal kicks, corners, those sorts of things. Ball rolls out from the activity that you're playing in. Good moment to jump in and do a bit of coaching. And then obviously we have our freeze moment. Tends to be the most popular coaching or application of coaching. I would argue that it's the least effective unless you're painting a very clear picture. If you're freezing a session, you need to be moving the ball, moving the players, recreating what just happened. Not an easy thing to do. In my experience as a coach educator, most failing candidates on coaching courses tend to rely too much on freeze moments and don't use them effectively. So we talked about the methodology there briefly. So there are 2 sort of main ways in this country to work through a session. The first one is play, practice, play, typically 3 stages. You have play phase 1, which is a small-sided version of the game. You should have the practice phase, which is the technical, tactical breakdown in the middle, which is the body of your coaching session, something you should all be used to. And then play phase 2, which is a larger sided game, in the hope that the players can apply what they've learned through the session. The second, most popular, I would say, is the 4-stage session plan, where you go basically, traditional. You've probably all been through it at some point. You do a warm-up, you move into a small-sided technical development activity, which now the Federation term is orientation. The idea being that you orientate the players to the environment, to the situation. So that's your moment to maybe set the opposition up so they, represent a game-like challenge, or whatever it is, we are orientating the players to the rest of the session. Your game-related activity should be slightly bigger numbers, and is where you're going to do most of your teaching. That's when you're going to get in there and do a lot of your information to your target group of players. And then finally your game, where they get the chance to implement what they've learned, implementation. So if you go on and do a D license or above at this point, mostly on the C, less so on the D, but if you'll be introduced at that point, you'll be introduced to these orientation, learning, and implementation language that the Federation use. Considerations when you go into planning your individual session. Again, we're still on the micro cycle here. How many players do you have? What equipment do you have? What's your field space? Is it lined? And then once you have that information prior to the session, once you have that knowledge, you can go ahead and start planning. I've put some of the planning tools that I have used as links here that you can click on. Academy Soccer Coach, I have found to be the most efficient. There is a free version of that one as well on academysoccercoach.co.uk. So I tend to use that one quite a lot. A lot of the curriculum development that I've done has been using the images from that. The other one is Sports Session Planner. That's a little bit more advanced. You can make the players move and do some actions and those sorts of things. There are 3D models as well that you can zoom in and rotate around, and pretty nifty program. And then the USSF Digital Learning Center has their planning tool as well. Very basic, but gets the job done. If you've done a grassroots online course, if you've done any in-person course, as part of your registration fee, you get 12 months free use of the Digital Learning Center's planning tool. So if you haven't already done the online courses through WSA that you can be refunded on, just another caveat to the fact that you can get a coaching course done online for free, and not only that, you'll get a free planning tool as part of that deal. So I would strongly advise, if you haven't already done the online courses, jump on and get them done, because at least you'll have this planning tool. By all means, handwrite your plans. I still do that. I still have I have a journal that I use to plan sessions in. It's, I still like that tangible feeling of picking up a book and being able to look at a session plan in my hand. So, I know in this day and age, a lot of coaches are using iPads and, Microsoft Surfaces and those sorts of things to have their session plans up. I do that as well, especially when I'm doing coaching assessments, when I'm teaching coaching courses. Being able to make notes and stuff on other people's session plans is always helpful. But yeah, nothing wrong with pen and paper. Okay, so this is the play, practice, play. I'm going to run you through a couple of examples. There's a 7v7 and 11v11 example here. I think the 7v7 one, if I remember correctly, is one from the Federation. And the 11v11 one is one that I did. Might be the other way around. Wait a second to load. Okay, so this is what a play, practice, play session would look like. Additionally, if you do one of the online courses, or if you have done one of the online courses, you'll get free access to pre-planned session plans. So again, another reason to get on and do these courses is the Federation will literally give you your session plans. If you do the 7v7 course, for example, you get 12 free session plans based on 7v7 players. If you do the 11v11 course, you'll get 12 free sessions of 11v11. So definitely worthwhile investing in doing that. So it takes a couple of hours to do the courses. So I know I feel like a hammer on about this every time I get in front of anybody, or if I talk to anybody in any capacity as the technical director for the State Association, but it's massively important that we increase our coach education body. Anyway, first play phase is intentional free play. It's normally a smaller sided version of the game. So the game model here is 7v7. So we typically play a 2v2, 3v3 at the start before moving into the core activity, the practice phase, where the numbers tend to be a little bit bigger. So now we've got, right here, we've got 3 against 2 with the goalkeeper, so 3v3. But as you can see, the core activity starts at this level. So we've got 3v3 here to 2 goals, 2 counter goals, and a central goal. It gives you the dimensions. It gives you the questions that you should be asking as the players are playing. Gives you the answers that you're looking for from the players. It also gives you the keywords that you can use just to drop in as and when you see fit. Now, if this activity is too challenging for the players, like we talked about at the start, a good way to reduce the challenge is to reduce the amount of opposition players. So they've gone to a 2v1 outfield player with a goalkeeper here. The idea being that will be easier to get success out of the players. Conversely, if this is too easy for them, that's when we start to build the numbers out. So this becomes a 4v3 game to goal with a goalkeeper. Again, your keywords, your questions, your answers, they're all there. It gives you notes on what to do and how to switch from core to more challenging. And then you go into your second play phase, When you were dealing with a 7v7 team, you'd anticipate having maybe 10 to 12 players. So this year you've got 5v5 outfield with a goalkeeper in each goal on a 7v7 field. Gives you the dimensions there if you were to zoom in a little bit. And then at the bottom, your opportunity to do a bit of reflection. Reflection is something we're going to touch on here in a couple of minutes, but a growing level of importance put on to your ability to reflect on your sessions. Jumping quickly to an 11v11 example of what a play practice play session should look like. Hopefully it loads up. Yep. So here you've gone into, again, attentional free play. You've got 3 games going at the same time of 3v3. You've got 2 goalkeepers, so that's 2v2 with goalkeepers. Then, because the game size is slightly larger, you go to a 9v7. Again, keywords, questions you can ask, the answers you're looking for. If it's too challenging, go to a less challenging activity where we reduce the number of defenders. If it's more challenging, we increase the number of defenders and have increased the numbers of attackers as well. And then your play phase 2 is the game model. Does anybody need any clarity on how a play practice play session runs? Play phase 1, small-sided games. Practice is your core activity where you jump in and will do most of your coaching. And then you'll finish play phase 2 as a game. Any questions? Okay. And then when we go to a 4-stage session plan, it will be something, it looks a little bit more traditional. So here we have, so this is the session template that I put together for Wyoming soccer. So what are your training? The topic is improve defending from midfield, the training objective. So I identify what's my target group? Who are my secondary players? What are we working on? Where are we working on it? When does it happen? Why do we do it? Okay, so we talk about the 5 W's a lot in coaching: who, what, when, why, and who, what, when, where, and why. So who is the target players? What are we working on? Where is it happening on the field? Why are we doing it? You know, because we need to be better at recovering the ball at certain part of the field. And then you can plan it out in terms of the numbers. When you have the live version of this, which is, again, will be available online for you, you can just click through, and these are all drop-down menus. You can just select your timings. And then these images, so everything that's here, so all the pictures and all the organizational parts all come from a document that I put to a session planning document. So this goes alongside the curriculum document with the learning wheels that you saw earlier. So this document is basically a book of practices, and underneath each practice is how you set it up. So underneath every practice, it'll tell you dimensions, it'll tell you how many players you need, what they need to do to play the game. The coaching points are up to you, because some of these games can be used in a number of different topics, right? So the coaching points are left to be developed by the individual coach, but these are all, you can literally just right click on the image and then copy and paste it over. I'm viewing it as a PDF right now, but when it goes on the website, you'll be able to interact with it, copy and paste, and collect the pictures and all that sort of stuff. But you can literally work through this book and handpick your sessions and just go and execute based on this program. So I developed this session plan. This is the U13 to U16 version. I've got a 17 to 19 and a U8 through U12 version as well. So lots and lots of activities for your players, everything from free kicks, corners, and then at the end is your session evaluation. What was the theme? Who were your target players? Do you have any comments? Do you have any, rating your players out of 10? I do use this session evaluation And there's, I think the session planner that's just the blank one. Yeah, it's in Excel. It's an Excel file, so you just drop the pictures in, and then you can go in and type whatever you need to do, just so it's fillable. And you can just fill out the form as you need and drag and drop the pictures into these boxes. Anybody else have any questions? Okay. So as I said, the USSF online Learning Center gives you access to the planning tool, and it gives you 12 sessions according to which game model you do the online course in. WSA will cover the expenses if you're doing the course. It takes less than 2 hours to get them done. And then once you do all this, once you have all this information, it's really important that you start to reflect on it. Reflect, and I'm sure all as coaches, as parents, as players, we all reflect on the session. Normally, it might just be as you're walking off the field or as you're driving home in the car. I saw the biggest uptake in my ability to deliver to the players. This is just my own experience, but I saw the biggest uptake. The more I educated myself, the more coach education I did, and the more that I started to reflect, take notes, and physically write down, made it tangible so I could come back and reflect on it, that it wasn't just a mental process anymore, the better my coaching got, without a shadow of a doubt. I would strongly advise, even if you're just jotting it down on the back of your handwritten session plan, just jot down some notes. This player did well. This player didn't do so well. Need to try this next time. Whatever it is, it gives you something to start reflecting on. And the more you invest in that process, the better you will get. It allows you to track your own progress. It allows you to track the progress of your players. I cannot stress it enough. Go out, do your coach education, and reflect on your coaching. Those are the two biggest things that I would recommend if you are serious about making the environment the best it can possibly be for the players. For the players. And finally, I'm sharing this document with you as well. What you're looking at here, is what I use to assess candidates on coaching courses. So when I'm going through the 5 stages of the session, is it organized? Is it game-like? Is it repetition? Is it challenging? Is the coaching? Is reflection? This is what I'm looking for. This is how I break it down. This is what we're looking for within the session. So you can literally go through this document, these last couple of pages, and find out if the coaches in your club, if you're a director of coaching, you're overseeing some coaches, are they hitting these? If you are a coach yourself and just want to self-reflect, use this as your self-reflection tool. Are you ticking these boxes? And it can be as basic as just ticking off afterwards. Okay, that was a green light, that was a yellow light. Okay, that didn't do that tonight, that's a red light. Or you can elaborate a little bit more. It's a fillable form. Again, it'll be online for you. You can type in some stuff. You can print it off and write in your thoughts. Whatever it is, use it as a reflection tool. It's a really good way to break the session down into the individual parts of the session, whether it be coaching, challenging, repetition, game-like, whatever it is. And that is it from me. I think I've managed to keep it just on the hour mark. I think it's 4:59 by my reckoning. I will open it up to questions and comments at this point. At this point, you don't have to ask a question. All the information that I've presented today will be shared. Will go on the website. Hopefully, I know I've been pretty verbose this afternoon. I've talked a lot, which I don't always love to do, but hopefully everybody took something from the presentation. If you have any questions or you want to see any other documents, I've got a lot of resources here on this laptop. If there's anything, if you want to see, the 8 through 12 curriculum, the session plans, I can show you any of that sort of stuff. I've got a little bit of time here. So if anybody wants to see any more or has any questions, let me know.
Dave, this is George. Fantastic presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, George.
You are an absolutely fantastic, knowledgeable person, and thank you for sharing all this. I know it's a lot of work behind it, and for you to share it with us, it's unbelievable. Do you, on the website, where when you will add this, there is a specific section where they will
Yeah.
do,
So on the so if you've, like I said, if you've been, yeah, hopefully everybody can still see my screen. If you go to wyomingsoccer.com here, the website is new. Is currently being updated. So getting this stuff on the new website is taking a little bit of while. But underneath the coaches tab is going to be a coach corner. So it's going to be one of these bigger menus. It might be going under this free coaching webinars one. All the information is going to go under the coaches tab on the new website.
Okay.
Okay, and I know Lisa is working on that. She's working with this. It's an external company that's running the website. So I think there's some teething problems as this gets launched this week. But it'll be all under the coaches tab on the Wyoming Soccer website.
Okay, and then sorry, I mean, can you share with us, or can you send me an email with the curriculum on the 11v11 that you created, or is that too much? Or
you want the curriculum, or you want the session planning document, or you want both? So I'll
both
just declare.
would be fantastic, and I would love for you. I created a curriculum here in for Justin Holy Soccer as well, and I would love for that to share with you. I did it a lot on. I used a lot of the Spanish Soccer Academy. You know, everybody was at that time, like 2 years ago, it was crazy with La Masia, so I studied a lot. So I would love to share that with you as well, and give you the
let's, for sure, we can start sharing ideas. You know, the more we share, the better everybody gets. So just so you have an idea, so this is the curriculum, right? So this is the curriculum document. This tells you what you should be working on, who you should be targeting, and when you should be doing, what coaching method you should be doing, the things you should be touching on. Now, based on so week 1 is attacking, playing out from the back. I would then go to my session planning document, right? And I would select. We're doing playing out from the back. I'll do this diamond game. I copy that. I go over to my session planner. I drop it in. I drop it in there. I put the organization in. Punch in a few coaching points, and then away we go. So that's the process that I go through for designing sessions.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm using Tactics Manager.
Okay.
But the platform doesn't really matter. So.
No, not at all, not at all. But yeah, happy to share this with you. I can just shoot me an email after this, and I'll reply to it with the information. The files might be a bit too big to send over an email, so I might have to put in a shared file on the SharePoint through WSA. But yeah, we can definitely get it over to you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? Not hearing anything. Again, my door is always open. Email, phone call, text, whatever it is. I will get back to you as quickly as I possibly can, as long as I have the pertinent information, or I will certainly point you in the right direction. I really appreciate everybody being here today. Look forward to catching up again next week. Next week, we're looking to get potentially a guest speaker in to do an interview type format based around college recruitment, speaking to a couple of college coaches that I know, based around a couple of different points of the country, just to give us some guidance on how best to funnel our players in that direction. If you have any suggestions, or you have anything else you want me to cover in next week's webinar, shoot me an email. Let me know if you feel like I'm missing the mark with some of the stuff that's more pertinent in your current environment. If not, look forward to catching up again next week. Thank you for coming, and we appreciate your time. Stay safe, stay healthy. See you soon, everybody.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. See you.
Thanks, Dave.